Welcome to another fantastic episode of the Contractor Business Builder podcast. We have the honor of having the guest of Greg Bray. He's the president of Blue Tangerine. Looking forward to talking with you today. How you doing, Greg?
Well, thanks so much for having me. Doing well. Thanks, Derek.
Right on. So, Greg, you started Blue Tangerine. Can you tell us a little bit about the history and where you got to and the work that you do with building websites for home builders and contractors?
Thanks. We have been building websites. Well, I've been building websites for home builders since 2000. Originally, I started with a different agency and was just a developer there, kind of evolved into leading the development team. And then eventually the owner there wanted to go do something a little bit different. So I ended up doing a buyout of the agency and rebranded it. And that was in 2006. So I've been doing the thing of being the guy for a long time since then. And it's been a lot of fun.
Right on. I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes, technology. I mean, it's always evolving and changing. And, I think the foundations generally stay pretty similar, but the tactics definitely change over time. So, having a great website is very important. Obviously, having it functional and reaching the target market and stuff like that. I feel like a lot of contractors do struggle with getting the quality leads, and just having a website there, in cyberspace doesn't do much unless you have, people going to it that are looking for your services. So what are some ways that contractors can effectively optimize their lead gen to get more eyeballs on their actual website?
Well, Derek, you make a great point in the fact that contractors need to recognize that their website should be a top lead generating source for them. And so if it's not, sometimes they don't do the investments to make it that, because they go, well, I'm not getting any leads, therefore I'm not going to do anything. And so you continue to not get any leads. And it's this kind of cycle or trap that you can fall into. So first, I just want to say it should be generating leads. So if it's not, then there's something that needs to be done differently. And that's where it gets into kind of what you were talking about is, okay, how do we then get traffic, get the right people to the website? And that's what the heart of digital marketing is all about, is getting your message in front of the audience that is the good fit for you, and then driving them to the website to learn more, to get to know you, to build trust, to get educated about your process and what you offer. And then obviously to invite them to contact you, reach out, make an appointment, schedule an estimate, whatever the next step looks like. And so those tactics, there's a lot of different ones. The most common one people are probably familiar with is called search engine optimization, or SEO, which is about optimizing the content on your website so that Google will show you, or other search engines. There are others besides Google, believe it or not. But in general, we talk about Google. So that Google will show you and results when someone's looking for what you do. And of course, we can dive into lots of different ones, Derek, but I don't want to run through all of it all at once. But SEO is probably the number one biggest place that you should be looking at when you're talking about driving traffic.
That makes sense. And I like SEO because it's kind of like a system. It's something you can invest in. Obviously, it has to be kept up, but when it's in place and done right, it can continually bring you leads, unlike some other marketing, like maybe advertising or social media, where you kind of need to keep airing the flames, or so to speak, putting fuel on the fire, whereas SEO can continue to kind of work more long term. It takes longer, from what I understand, to get into place. What are some, let's say I'm a contractor, just started my company, I've got a website up. Where do I start with SEO? What's the best way to get some search engine optimization working?
Yeah, you're right, Derek, that SEO is something that takes a little bit longer to kind of prime the pump, or I like to say sometimes we have to plant the seeds and give them some time to grow. But once the tree is bearing fruit, it continues to bear fruit, right, without as much work. You still have to feed it from time to time, but you don't have to do quite as much as you do at the beginning. Of course, it'll depend on how competitive your market is too. If you're in a smaller area that doesn't have a lot of people doing what you do, then the competition for those same keywords is not the same as if you're in a larger, metro area with a lot of people going after those same keywords. So that's one of the challenges with SEO, is that it exists in a competitive environment with other people trying to rank for the same things. As far as where to start, especially if you're new, first you just got to start with being patient, but also recognizing that this is not a game where you trick Google or where you try to fool them in some way. The heart of what Google wants is they want to give people the content that they're looking for that's helpful for them. So if you think about it from Google's perspective, their goal is to give the searcher the most relevant, useful information that they're trying to find. So Google is trying to serve their audience of the searcher and their audience of the website owner, or developer that's putting the content out there. So your best opportunity with Google is to be providing the most useful, informative content that you can. Now, that doesn't sound very exciting because that's actually work. There's a lot of work that goes into that has nothing to do with like optimization and updating and keywords and all of that. It's about how can I be helpful to my audience? Kinds of questions that my prospective buyer has, and how can I be able, because I will be the one providing them that content, and Google will recognize that and will say, hey, people like this content, this is helpful and educational, and it will naturally have the right keywords in it when you look at it from a how can I be helpful perspective. What are the questions that my prospective buyers, customers, clients, whatever term you want to use, have, and then work through and be creating content that answers those questions. Now, that question might be, where's your home located, or where do you serve? That's one of those questions, right? What types of services do you offer? But then there's a lot of other questions like, well, what's important when hiring a roofer, or why should I consider this when talking to a plumber, or what's the best type of fill in the blank that I should consider when looking at whatever type of contractor we're dealing with. There's a lot of questions people have, and if you can answer those questions, that's the heart of good SEO, in my opinion.
Okay. And how important is consistency with like having content for pages or blogs and things like that? How is there a certain amount of new content that should be going out, or is it more just the kind of how well the content is aligned with your ideal audience or people that would be searching for you?
The ideal amount of content, Derek, honestly, is what you can commit to and stay consistent doing, right? It's better for you to be adding something on some type of regular cadence that you can commit to than it is to say, oh, I need to put 1,000 pages out in the first 30 days and then never do anything again. Because what happens is your content will get stale over time, because we just kind of naturally think of things in the moment of what's going on around us. And sometimes the environment changes, sometimes the needs change, things like that. So I recommend that while ideally, you'd love to put out stuff all the time, but it's a lot of work. Yeah. And it's not really fair to say for failure if you see something every day, but it's part of your marketing for your business. So to commit to that, especially if you've got a smaller team, that's a pretty heavy lift. And so you're better off to say, gosh, we can do something once a quarter and commit to it and make sure it happens, than you are to try to say, hey, we need to do something every day or every week, and then you fall down, it doesn't happen. And then somebody comes to your website and the date on the last article is 6 months old, and they go, well, if that's so out of date, what else is out of date? And then you actually have a negative effect if your content is clearly old and stale and dated.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think anybody that's tried to put out a lot of content at a time has, felt that content, creator burnout, where it's like, oh, I know I need to post something, or I know I need to write something, and, you don't have the energy for it. So yeah, definitely consistency is good, but manageable as well within inside your organization. What do you feel are like some common mistakes or misconceptions when it comes to websites or the digital marketing space for construction contractors and home builders?
I think some of the misconceptions are, first of all, that the homepage needs to rank for every keyword that you might want, and that's the only page that matters. Our research has shown, as we've studied analytics across our clients for many years, that the reality is only like 18 to 20% of your website visitors actually enter your site on your homepage, which means that 80% or more are entering on some other page of the site. And of course, that makes sense from the standpoint of every page talks about something a little bit different. There's different kind of keyword sets and interactions. And so Google's trying to find the page, not just the site, but the specific page that has the most relevant information. But when somebody enters at that other spot of the site, you recognize page. Is that enough for them to want to know more? Is that enough for them to continue into their learning or exploring or shopping experience? Because we sometimes, when it's our site and we've been building it, we kind of assume, oh, they started on the homepage and then they clicked one of these links, but they learned everything about us that we said on the homepage first, and then they came here and then they came there. And that's usually not the journey. It's called a web for a reason. And because of the way it all intertwines and is tangled, it's not a line of content usually. Yeah. And so so as we're trying to optimize, if we want to talk about one particular kind of focus or keyword, that might be a different page than some other focus or keyword. And we don't want to put all of them on the homepage because that just dilutes the keyword density, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then also as they start on those different pages, how do we make sure that we recognize if this is the very first thing they know about us, what do they know? Can they figure out the area that we serve? Because if they can't, then they may move on because they might do what I need, but I don't know where they do it. And, because Google can give you somebody far, far away, by accident sometimes. So make sure that we've got some indicators in there to help them get back to, where they are on the site, to get back to other information, to understand where you work and serve and the kinds of things you do. I'm not saying that you have to put everything on every page. That's exactly the opposite of what I'm saying. But you have to make sure that there's those little pointers, those calls to action, those indicators of how do I find other things and make sure this is really what I want. So I think, again, that mistake is trying to optimize the homepage for everything and then assuming that everybody enters on the homepage.
Yeah, that's very interesting with your finding there that, people are coming from other sources and going directly to other pages on your website. So it really is you want to have everything as a whole working for you and, different pages for different services or keywords and things like that you mentioned. You also pulled out that you guys obviously look at the analytics and that's a big part of digital marketing. Can you talk a little bit about that as far as Google Analytics and what, a home builder should be looking at as far as their analytics? Obviously, if you have a marketing company, they'll be the experts and know how to utilize those. But can you just maybe give us a little bit of a window of some of the analytics that you look at regularly or can kind of tell the health of a page?
So I think the most important thing is look at it. We talked to a lot of folks who, I think I set that thing up somewhere sometime long ago and they don't even ever check it at all. So because you can't do anything until you've got the baseline to compare to, because our goal is to say, okay, if we change this piece or if we add this new content or if we adjust this layout, does it make a difference or not? Well, if we don't have anything to compare that to, we don't know if it's making a difference. Now, of course, outside of your analytics, you should have your leads as your primary measurement, right? How many leads are we getting? And that's usually people filling out a form or calling or whatnot to contact us, right? And those should be going hopefully into a CRM tool of some type and not just somebody's inbox to get lost in their email. But I know people that their CRM is a bunch of sticky notes on their desk or on their dashboard of their truck, whatever people to call back. And that is a CRM. It's not the most efficient one probably. But I think when you talk about what's most important, well, leads are most important. That's the metric that matters most. So then what are the things that then help us see how do we get more leads or how are the leads moving through? Within analytics, by default, it tracks a lot of things that are called events. So this is typically people clicking on a link, for example, as an event and moving through the site. But there's a couple of key events that are typically not tracked without a little bit of extra setup. The biggest one being a form completion. And again, that's someone submitting your contact form or your request information form or your newsletter sign up form, whatever type of form you've got. The other one is what's called a click to call link. And that's where you can turn a phone number into an actual link. And this is so important because so many people are on their phones or their mobile devices when they're looking at your website. If somebody's on a phone and they want to contact you and get more information, don't make them type with their thumbs to fill out a form. Let them push a call now button and just call you because this thing they're holding in their hand actually has the ability, it's magic to reach out and talk to somebody, right? And actually do that. But often that click to call, if it's not tracked properly, doesn't get logged as a website driven lead. It shows up as somebody said, oh, we got 5 calls today, and they have no idea why somebody called them unless they happen to be asking, which hopefully they are, as to where the lead comes from. But that way your analytics will also log that this lead came from the website. Once you have those conversion points tracked properly, now you can start to connect those back to where people originally came from before they came to your website. And so within your analytics, you also want to use what's called UTM tracking codes. And there's a lot of stuff on, Google will tell you how to set these up if you just ask. But this is where you put extra tracking codes on the links that you set up outside your site. So if you post something on Facebook, for example, you want to have these extra codes on that link. If you're putting out an email, if you're doing some type of, even a billboard, or a billboard's a little harder, but some type of a QR code that's on a sign or something like that. Any type of URL that you put out to the world, driving people back to the site. If you have these extra codes that tell you more more about where they came from, you can connect all of those back to now to your form completions or your click to call leads and say, gosh, of our 20 people that filled out the form this month, we can tell 5 of them came from our Facebook campaign, 3 of them came from our emails, 2 of them came from the Google ads that we ran. And now you can start to see which marketing activities are actually driving the leads. And that's what analytics is all about, is how do we connect back to our efforts, especially when we're spending money and time on these efforts. What's working, what's not, what's getting us the leads.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you want to be doubling down on what's working and then pruning, what's not working so well. Definitely. As far as like, there's A/B testing obviously for online advertising. Do you use A/B testing in your sites or ads, or where does that come into play as far as like in the marketing realm?
I always believe that testing is powerful, and testing is something that we always want to be doing, because marketing is all about making small adjustments and seeing the impact. Testing within ads is one area for sure. And of course, within Google, if you're doing like Google ads, it has some tools built in that you can do that with. Within your website itself, A/B testing can be really powerful. I mean, we've seen test results show that just changing the color of a button can increase conversions. Changing the words on a button from contact us to request information or something like that sometimes can make a difference in conversions, just changing the wording. And there's a lot of tools out there that can make this a lot easier to see what's happening. The other thing these tools can do is, because they kind of are able to log what people are doing on your website that is outside of what Google Analytics can log. We found one time we put one of these tools on a site and there was a headline that said find your home in it. Well, and find your home is obviously an action word, and often it's associated with a link. And in this case, this heading was not a link. It was just a heading, and that's just the wording that it happened to come out in that process. And we discovered with these tracking tools that people were clicking on it, but it wasn't a link. So again, analytics is not going to pick that up because it's not a link, but this testing tool that we were using was able to say, hey, that's a link. We've seen the same thing another time where someone had like their salesperson's email address, but it wasn't linked to actually generate an email. And people were clicking on it and nothing was happening because of that. So it's like, hey, let's make this a link. It's like little things like that. And you can get changes along those lines. That's not exactly A/B testing, but that's a tool that is kind of part of one of the A/B testing tools. It gets you some, we call it heat mapping type tools and things like that. So it does take a little bit of planning and thought to do testing, because you have to tell, what do we want to change? We don't want to change too many things at once, because then you aren't quite sure what made the difference if things are different. You need a tool, but the tools, there's some that are not very expensive out there. The other trick though with a lot of folks that gets in the way of A/B testing is you do have to have enough traffic to get kind of a statistically valid sample. If you only have 10 people look at the page, it's probably not enough to really say, hey, this made a difference of changing the words on this button. So that's where sometimes contractors and builders can run into trouble, is they don't have quite enough traffic for some of these tools to really, or you just have to run the tests for a lot longer to get enough data for it to be valid. But it is definitely something to think about, and we highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's definitely, a way to kind of optimize the leads that you're already coming to your sites and or clicking through ads or what have you. It's funny you mentioned that story, because I did a similar thing on my website recently and realized pretty much exactly the same thing, where I had like a free download and there's a button, but then there's also a header that just saying what the name of it was. And through the heat mapping, it showed that people were actually clicking the title and not like they were clicking the button as well, but both. So it's like, let's just make that into a link and remove the friction and just have, people able to navigate a lot easier and move through the site. You've talked I was looking over some of your stuff and you mentioned geofencing, and how can you explain what that is and how it's applicable to marketing or websites?
Yeah, geofencing is a advertising tactic that is using the physical location of where people go to indicate their buyer intent. So basically what we're trying to do is, hey, we're trying to find the people that are looking for what we offer. And we're trying to say, okay, where do those people go that would tell us that they're looking for what we offer? And once they go there, now that they've gone to that place, we can start showing them our ads, because that puts them on the list, so to speak, of someone who we want to advertise to. So in a home builder construct, a really great great indicator is, are they visiting the sales centers of communities that aren't yours, that are nearby, that might indicate they're looking for a home similar to the kind of home that you provide. Even if you're a custom builder that doesn't have a community, knowing that these people are shopping for a home, you go, okay, they visited these other, new home sales offices. Let's show them our ad because they're shopping for homes, right? Now, granted, not everybody who walks into a sales office is an active buyer. So you get, there's a little bit of, extra stuff on the sides there. But in general, as opposed to just saying everybody who shops at Walmart might be buying a home, that's a little too broad, right? And we don't want to, because we're trying to utilize our budget as effectively as possible in showing it. These ads then show up on people's, primarily we're talking about mobile devices, because that's where we get the location data from is their devices. We're all being tracked, people. I don't want to pop anybody's bubble. It's a little creepy, but until it changes, let's take advantage of it as marketers, right? So this idea is, it's not when they walk into this area that we call it fenced on in the platform. Their phone doesn't start ringing or buzzing the instant they walk in or anything like that. It just that location puts them on the list in the ad network, and then the next time they open up their news app or their sports app or their favorite game that they're playing on their phone, and the little banner ads that show up in the games and things like that, the ad network is always trying to say, what ad should I show to this person, right? And when they don't have one, they just show a generic one. But in this case, they'll go, oh, Derek went here and now he's playing Angry Birds and I'm going to show him an ad. And so I'm going to go show him this ad because this builder wants to get in front of him. And so now you see that. Of course, you didn't open Angry Birds to look at ads, right? So that wasn't your goal. So they don't have a super high conversion rate compared to some other types of advertising. But especially if you're looking for an awareness campaign for people that, again, we know that you were potentially shopping for homes and now you get to see this ad for another builder you hadn't maybe thought of or even knew was there. That could be like, oh man, I should check them out. And so those ads can click through the website, but you can also with geofencing track if they come to visit your office. You can have a conversion zone as well that's physical. Okay. So we can get that conversion. If they went to one of our target zones, they saw the ad, we can see that in the analytics, and then we can see that they came to our sales office, and we can see that we don't know the individual, but we know the numbers that go, right? 100 people saw or came here, 50 of them saw the ad, and 5 of them came to our office, right? We can see that kind of a thing. We don't know that it was Derek that came to our office, but so it's really powerful. We see other builders who are doing more entry level, first time home buyer type homes. They might go fence like a higher end apartment complex or townhomes where there's renters, and then they run a campaign that's like, why rent when you can buy for the same monthly payment, or something like that. And they do those types of things targeting these people. May not be shopping right now, but it's like opening up their eyes to, I might be able to own versus rent if that's of interest, kind of a thing. So lots of interesting ways to do geofencing. We've seen people fence like home shows, home and garden type shows, things like that, where you might be looking for a contractor or those kinds of things. And so you can follow up with them after, things like that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And home improvement, building, home builders, I mean, it's so location dependent, and you can really be, the local hero, the local contractor. So geofencing just fits in really good with that. And it's an easy way to really niche by targeting, certain areas or neighborhoods or what have you. So that makes a lot of sense. What's some of the best advice you've ever received? Could be marketing, could be from a mentor or business partner. What's some great advice that you received, and how did you apply it?
Oh gosh, I think in my own personal career, some great advice I got once was never be irreplaceable, because then you can no longer be promoted. So if they can, so always be training your replacement, right? Is from a business standpoint. But I think from a marketing perspective, some of the best advice I always got is always be learning, right? Marketing is always changing. It's always about that experimentation. We talked about the testing aspect of it all. There's always new ways to do it, and there's always ways. Just because somebody else hasn't tried it yet doesn't mean that it won't work for you. Now that said, you have to recognize that there's costs there, so you always have to kind of balance that with what can the budget afford, right? And things there. But and connected with that is when sales are down, it's not the time to cut marketing. That's the other advice I've received. It's actually the time where you can capture more market share because other people are cutting their marketing, and it's scary, right? When sales are down, it's scary. to go in and spend more on marketing. But that's really, one of those opportunities in those, because there's always cycles and ups and downs in business and life and everything else.
Yeah, definitely. It's I think anybody that's been in business for a while, in the home building space knows the pain of having those leads slow down or finishing up couple of large projects and realizing, oh, we don't have much in the pipeline, and then having to really hit the ground running as far as the marketing and sales. But it can be tempting to kind of cut the marketing budget, but really that's just kind of shooting yourself in the foot as far as bringing in new business and things like that. And like you mentioned, if you're feeling the pinch of like slower leads, probably every competitor around you is as well. It's just one of those cyclical things. So it makes a lot of sense. Can you tell us about a story of a client that you worked with, where they started, when they came to you, where things were at, the kind of specific things you helped them with, and the success that they were able to achieve?
We work with folks at all different stages across things, but I think we've seen clients that have just in a couple of months of just really focusing on SEO, we've seen 30 to 40% increases in leads through the website. Now, granted, it's going to depend a bit on how much you've been doing before, right? When you go from zero and nothing to something, it can move things a lot faster than if you've been doing a little bit and now we're just trying to further improve and optimize that. But yeah, we've seen some pretty dramatic improvements when people really focus and start paying attention to what they're doing online and make the website a priority. I think, Derek, the most important thing to me when you talk about results and what can happen is marketing should be generating a return, regardless of what you're doing with your marketing. It should not be an expense. It should be something that pays for itself in increased sales. And so if you are not getting increased sales and you're not getting increased leads and opportunities, then there's something out of whack there. Now, that doesn't mean that it's marketing's fault, because marketing might be providing leads and then your sales folks can't, do what they need to do. Or there might be a disconnect between what your product offering is in the market and what people want and some of those kinds of things. So it's not just, oh, we're not getting the improvement, so fire all the marketing folks and start over. But if it's not happening, there's something that needs to be figured out, because marketing, if done well and done right, should be paying for itself multiple times over with the return. And you should see that kind of growth. And frankly, if you're selling homes, it doesn't take very many additional homes to pay for a good amount of marketing, because that's one of the benefits of being in home building is our product's really big and expensive. And so if we were selling, $100 widgets or $50 widgets, you got to sell a whole lot more of those to pay for some of this stuff. But one home at a good normal margin covers a lot of marketing.
Yeah, definitely. You don't need hundreds necessarily of leads to have a decent, revenue stream for a home builder. If you can close on, a number of homes every year, then it doesn't take much to increase that. As far as like lead quality, I know this can be a pain point for a lot of contractors. Like, they turn on ads. Maybe they haven't done it before and they're getting now I know Facebook's a bit notorious for this, but, it could be Google, Facebook, and the lead quality is just low. They're getting the wrong types of people or, kind of tire kickers and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on that? And then what needs to change to improve the quality of leads? Or can you speak to that as far as like lead quality?
Obviously, we want to have the right kind of buyer. And I think there's, when you talk about lead quality, there's kind of two categories I put that in. One is it the wrong buyer because like, gosh, they want a $300,000 home and you build $1.5 million homes, right? And that's obviously not a good fit. And so how do we adjust our messaging to make it clear that we do $1.5 million homes so that the entry-level buyer is not, trying to get something from us, right? That's a messaging issue and disconnect if you're getting those kinds of leads. If you're getting the lead where, you use the phrase tire kickers, but someone who's just still early in their process, while that's not the ideal lead, we want somebody who's ready to buy right now, right? That's what business always wants. But especially with homes, the journey is long. And so I would be cautious about discounting the person who's early in their buyer journey as a bad lead. It's just they're not there yet. And in that case, we want to have a process to kind of nurture and stay in touch and educate that lead differently than the person who's ready to make an appointment and, comes start the process and buy in the next 60 days. Because there are plenty of people that will take 12 to 18 months to figure out, especially with a custom home, that's such a big deal. They only do this once, twice in their lifetime, if that. So they take their time figuring this out. And you don't want to just blow them off just because they're not ready today. you need a process, and that process takes some work to continue to feed them information. Obviously, if you've got a CRM tool that's got some drip email campaigns and things like that, that's a great way to use that. So again, if it's the wrong fit, like they just can't afford what we want, that's one type of bad lead. If it's someone that's just not quite ready to buy today, but might a year from now, that's a different kind of lead that we need to do something different with.
Yeah, definitely. I like how you made the distinction and mentioned, that, there's a nurture process and getting in front of the right people, even if they're not ready to buy now, they could be potential clients in the future. And that'll kind of set you up for future growth and, improve your chances. And I think that's also just one thing with marketing is understanding there is that time delay between someone like seeing your company or talking to you and when they're actually ready to make a purchase. And that can be a month, that could be 6, 12, 18 months, as you said. So it could be years down the road. You never quite know. So yeah, if they're the right type of client, but the wrong timing, that can still be, very beneficial to the company. And it's kind of like future money in the bank, if you will, to be able to nurture and be in touch with those kind of clients. What's the best way for our audience to connect with you or Blue Tangerine to learn more about, your services and the content that you share?
Yeah, love to connect, answer questions. Our URL is bluetangerine.com. Happy to share there. You can connect with us there. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. So if somebody wants to search, I don't think there's too many Greg Brays on LinkedIn, but there's probably more. Isn't it always crazy when somebody else has your name and you're like, wait a minute, how did that happen?
How does that happen?
Yeah. But happy to connect on LinkedIn, or my email is just greg@bluetangerine.com. Feel free to drop me a line and a question. Happy to help.
Perfect. So we'll put the links in the description of the video or podcast, depending where you're listening or watching this. So you can, click through and go check out all the great stuff that Greg's got going on there and reach out to them. Any last words of wisdom or advice or points that you want to share?
I think it's just the idea that your website should be generating leads, and it should be a significant portion of your leads. And if it's not because websites don't work. It's because your website isn't working. So let's figure out how to get it fixed, because websites work.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Greg, for coming on here and sharing your knowledge and expertise. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.